So welcome to the second ever MMA Casual Podcast. I'm here with my best friend Daniel Rodriguez, and we're going to be covering UFC for all of 2022 and what's to come of 2023. So say hello, Daniel.
Hey everyone, nice to see you guys again. Good to be back. Just discussing some mixed martial arts, ending the year on what was arguably, good, bad, however you want to see it.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff happened, so we have a lot to cover.
Yeah, and it's December 18th, so we had the UFC fight night last night. Sean Strickland against Jared Cannonier.
Yep.
How do you feel about that one?
So two big contenders in the middleweight division. Going into it, I wasn't really sure who to pick because, quite frankly, Jared's coming off of that loss against Adesanya where he didn't look very impressive. Not a lot of output from him. He was kind of searching for that big punch, but Adesanya had an answer for everything that he had. So honestly, it led to a boring fight. And then Strickland coming off of that same card from a vicious loss against Pereira, who, as we know now, is the 185 champion. I wasn't sure how his chin was going to hold up. And I will say, in the fight, he definitely impressed me. He was able to take a lot of, big shots from Jared. His fighting style overall, I think it just doesn't do well, or he's not going to find a lot of success in the top 5 of that division. I feel like a lot of the times when he fights, it's just a glorified sparring match.
Yeah.
He just jabs a lot, throws a 1-2. He looks very good when he does it, and hats off to him for having very good striking. I don't really think he has like a kickboxing background or anything. I think he's just always trained MMA.
Yeah.
But overall, with that fighting style, I don't see how you can be, beating the elite guys at the top of that division.
Yeah, definitely, in my opinion, not a championship contender. One of the things that worried me was for both of them was same. Jared Cannonier coming off a loss, fighting for the belt. Even though it was decision, I said, I don't know if he comes back from something like that, which it wasn't that serious. But Sean Strickland, on the other hand, took that huge knockout to Alex Pereira not too long ago. And I even said on my TikTok page, I was like, I think this is going to be the decline of Sean Strickland. I think his career is going to start going downhill. With that being said, I was actually surprised because he did look good in there. I've never liked Sean Strickland's fighting style because I do think he's kind of boring. He's just there, very technical, right? And for me, he's always looked really uncomfortable. When Sean Strickland's in there, even like his guard looks weird and everything. He like keeps his hands low. I just don't like him. He looked like the bigger guy yesterday, which was cool. I was like, man, I didn't know Sean Strickland was that big. You know, as far as his height and stuff, he looked significantly bigger than Jared Cannonier, not speaking muscle-wise. But just a boring fight. And now moving forward with Jared Cannonier, I'm like, you've given us 2 very, very boring performances. You got to do something. You got to do something for us. And he got the win,
right?
But you got to do something else.
And there were times during the fight that it looked like, had he followed up a little bit more, he could have, finished Sean. In times that it looked like he was, still recovering from a punch that Jared had landed. But, output wasn't always there. Definitely towards the end of the fight, Jared picked it up a little bit more. But I think if he really wants another shot at the title, he has to, increase his output and then also just not be so afraid and timid to take chances. Because, when you're facing Whitaker, Alex Pereira, Adesanya, you can't just be letting them dominate the entire fight because they're going to win, playing their style. So,
and honestly, from what I've seen, I think it's more about his opponents rather than him because he had a lot of control. He had a lot of center control. If you see him pushing the pesos for the majority of the fight, obviously, that changed a couple of times. But I think it goes to show about the respect people have for his striking and power. And same with Izzy. Izzy dances around a lot of people, but that's what happened with him for 5 rounds. And Sean Strickland yesterday, there were quite a few times where he was doing the same. Like the first 2 rounds were feel-out rounds. Right. And it almost never felt like they got in a groove. There was a few exchanges where then they started, battling it out. But for a lot of the fight, it was just like, hey, let me, I respect you. And that's what I felt was coming from both ends. And that's why we got kind of that boring fight. And I think it's relevant to say, especially with all the decisions we've had recently, that is a real split decision.
Right. Yeah, the judges, I think 2 of them had it 49-46 in opposite direction. Mm-hmm. One for Strickland, one for Cannonier. the other judge had it, I think, 48-47 for Cannonier. And so, it is what it is. Strickland went on Instagram afterwards and was saying that the robbery, and all this stuff, the judges need to be held accountable.
That is not a robbery. We talk about other fights this year, Sean O'Malley, Paddy Pimblett. You call those robberies? I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but yes, I could see how you feel that's a robbery. Even Li Jingliang against Daniel Rodriguez, that is a robbery. Right. That fight yesterday was actually a split decision. I'm glad it was a split, because if it went unanimous, well, it could have gone unanimous for either of them. But I felt like we needed to see a real split decision, because half the time we get split decisions, they're not really split. So I was happy about that. And one of the things that one of the analysts said last night, I'm not sure who it was, is that no round was won unanimously by any of the judges. Right, yeah. What I thought was cool. Yeah. So, meaning, let's say round one, you had 2 judges score for Strickland, maybe 1 for Cannonier, and there was not one round that was unanimous for all of them. And I thought, that just goes to show how close that fight was.
Yeah, and I think also it's misleading if you just look at all of the stats for the whole fight, because these fights aren't judged, based on a whole fight. They're judged by round. So even though Strickland might have had the edge, in total strikes or total significant strikes, it doesn't really matter so much, because you're judging each round individually. You're not judging the whole fight.
A lot of people don't really think about that, and it's a flaw, because I could I could get knocked down 6 times in a round, but if I dominated you for 4 rounds, I took you down, I had some control time, I win that fight. Right. I won 4 rounds to 1, and people don't get that, because obviously for 1 round I was getting tossed around, but it doesn't work that way. And I just think there's a lot of inconsistency recently with the judges, and we're gonna get into that when we talk about last week. And I guess that's, let's segue into UFC 282. Yep. So that was a very disappointing card. I don't know how you feel about it.
It was disappointing when Glover had to Yuri had to pull out because of the shoulder injury. Glover was asked to fight Magomed Ankalaev. He refused it. He said he needed more time to prepare for his fighting style. He would have been happy to take that fight in Brazil for UFC 283. And so the UFC didn't want that, so they pushed the co-main event to the main event, and we got what we got.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the whole card from start to finish, and even a week before, we had that disappointing news with Yuri. I think the card went downhill from there. Yeah. It was just like everything that could go wrong went wrong. Murphy's Law. So one of the things that really bothered me, and Ariel Helwani was the one who actually put out a video in his car saying, I just spoke to Glover, and he told me, he's obviously disappointed, he's upset. He told them, I'm willing to fight John. And guys, you can't think, because I actually had someone say like, oh, why, if he's champ and he's willing to fight John, why not Ankalaev? It's a completely different camp. Right. And okay, he's still fighting on short notice, but he's fought him before. He's fought John before. He's never fought Ankalaev before. So you're preparing for someone completely new. And you know what? Glover's at a point in his career where he's a little too old to be as risky. He shouldn't be fighting, he shouldn't be fighting someone out with 14 days notice, something like that. So I understood that. What's wrong here is someone like him with so much experience and everything you've done for the UFC, for you to say, hey, I'm willing to do it in January, literally just a month away, and the UFC to be like, no, we need this to happen now. If you're not fighting, guess what? Someone else is for it. And I thought that was so disrespectful. And I get it. It's a business. They need the numbers. You can't. That's not the same card if no one's fighting for the belt. But look what happened. I think it just blew up in Dana's face a little there by making that move. So I thought that was messed up. And honestly, you know what? I don't think anyone did enough. Like, Ankalaev won that fight, in my opinion. It was a close fight. I hate that it was a split draw. So no one got the belt. But,
right. It definitely, caused a lot of, or even more of a disruption into the light heavyweight division. With Yuri out, and then this fight, being for the vacant title. Now we have even more of a disruption. We'll talk about it later on, but now, the belt is on the line with 2 completely different fighters. Overall, I don't think anyone won that fight. In the moment, watching it, especially after coming off of the co-main event and all the turmoil there, it was very easy to be like, this is bullshit, judges are rigged, whatever. I think Jan didn't do enough to win. However, Ankalaev, maybe you can score it for him depending on how you view the control time and how much those mattered in the last 2 rounds. But unanimously, I think most people had rounds 1 through 3 for Jan. And so, for the fight to change, the way that it did, with Ankalaev dominating so much in the end. I could see how it was a split draw. That one judge that had it, I think 48-48, or a 10-8 round in round 5 for Ankalaev. Had he had it 10-9, Jan would have won that fight and he'd be the light heavyweight champion right now. So overall, it was a very, unsatisfied,
very anticlimactic,
anticlimactic, way to end things. But it is what it is. This is the UFC, and I think Dana, to your point, was definitely frustrated in the end. I think it shows in the press conference.
Yeah,
he was very short with everyone and very, just tense.
And then we're gonna get into that next fight with a lot to say about Paddy Pimblett. But one of the things that I knew Dana White was going through it was when he stepped up for that press conference, he addressed it immediately. And there's a little more detail, but he mentions the Glover Jamal Hill fight coming up immediately. And one thing Dana White has always said when people ask him, who's going to fight next, or does this mean that, let's say, he gets the title shot or this, he's always like, I don't make fights on fight nights.
Right, yeah.
They have their Tuesday or Wednesday, I forgot what day of the week, that they sit down, the rankings come out, they do everything, they handle it, and he always says it anytime there's a question.
Yeah, because the reporters are always asking,
what's
next
so who's
champ?
next? So who's next to step up? And then, for him to just say, no, Jamal Hill Glover Teixeira, January, there it is. It was like, you son of a gun, you had a bad night.
Yeah.
And I think we have to, address why his night was so bad. Not only did they not have a new light heavyweight champion, but his golden boy, Paddy Pimblett. And this we have to touch upon. I think Dana White saw Paddy Pimblett that night and he said, fuck, this is not what I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, the kid brings in the crowd. He's definitely, the face of British MMA right now. Ever since Bisping, was out of the picture, the UFC has been trying to find their next, poster boy for British MMA. For a while, it looked like it was going to be Darren Till. He got pushed to the title shot and lost, and ever since then, he's been struggling. And we'll talk about his fight as well. But here comes Paddy the Batty, signed with the UFC in 2020, I believe. Had his first fight last year. Got rocked in his first fight, but then ended it with a TKO. Yeah. Next 2 fights, he ended them both with submissions. But overall, he so far in those 3 fights leading up to this Jared Gordon fight, he didn't really look all that impressive. You compare it to someone of the likes of like Conor McGregor, who he talked the talk, but he also walked the walk. Each one of his fights when he began in the UFC were stellar, and so a lot of people like to compare the stardom of McGregor to Paddy because in some ways they're comparable, but as far as the fights go and his performances, he's completely below McGregor. It's not even close. I think anyone in the top 15 would give Paddy, a very bad night in the octagon. But that performance against Jared was just very lackluster. And like you were saying in the press conference, Dana was just, blaming it on Jared. And saying how can you expect to go into the third round?
Disrespectful.
Yeah, he's like, what kind of game plan is that? There was a boring fight and all this stuff, and it's like he just doesn't want to admit that Paddy, didn't do enough. Yeah,
terrible call.
Yeah,
and I hate that he said that about Jared Gordon. One thing I'll say, Dana White has always said it. He says it, and I think that's very true for the Ultimate Fighter. I think it's true for someone wanting superstardom, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. You have a close fight or a debatably close fight, do not leave it for the judges because it can go the other way. Right. I think that's one. But I think it's very flawed and I think it's ridiculous in a professional sport when you have a clear winner and it goes the other way. Don't blame it on the judges. Then there's something wrong with the judging here, right? You know, almost every time a fight is over, the majority knows who wins that, right?
Right.
And they should. But since it's just 3 judges and the whole thing, I think that's a flaw in the system because Jared Gordon, let's say it's a close fight, he comes in the 3rd round. I don't care what anybody says. Same thing with Petr Yan against Sean O'Malley. If you take someone down, it's pointage. If you're controlling someone, it's pointage. If I take you to the cage and you cannot get your back off the cage, that is control time. That is time that I am stopping you, a grown man, from fighting. That's points right there. I don't care if it's boring. Kamaru Usman has done it his whole career. Take you to the cage, take you down. That is winning a fight, like it or not, for us, if we find it entertaining or not. So I think it's ridiculous for him, as the president of the company, to come out and be like, don't do that. Don't leave it for the judges because no, it shouldn't work like that. That's a clear win on him. And I just think it's stupid. And it goes back, and I'm going to just kind of segue into something and come back. Sean O'Malley against Petr Yan. I disagree with that decision. I rewatched the fight. I can see how it went Sean's way. I really can. However, yes, Petr Yan controlled him. And yes, the argument at that time was, but he didn't capitalize on anything. He really didn't get anything going. It's not about that. Even if he didn't have the advancements he was looking for, even he controlled him. He took him to the ground. He took him to the cage. Whatever he did, that is control. That matters. Yes, just like damage matters. That's why we have significant strikes. That's why those strikes matter. But at the end of the day, who hits harder? You don't know. Do we have some microchip technology letting us know who's actually hitting harder?
Right.
You don't feel that. So we go based off damage, off of you getting rocked, you getting knocked down, visible injury. And that's why we have significant strikes. That's what counts.
Yep.
So there's a lot of inconsistency with the judging right now. And it's just very apparent and it's super disappointing. But Patty, the baddie, that one was like the craziest shit I've seen in a long time. Because, Sean O'Malley, Petr Yan, when we saw that fight together, I was pissed. I was like, this is bullshit. Obviously, the golden boy. But this one was like disrespectful to the fans. This is just like, you guys aren't even hiding it anymore.
Right.
You have to take that win away. You know what I mean? Like, that was not his. So to give it to him and then Dana White to defend it, like, Jared had a bad game plan. Like, no, there's a different flaw here. And it's definitely the judges. And obviously, it's because they're I'm not going to say they're in bed with the promoters, but at the end of the day, of course, those judges want to give Dana White what he wants. You know what I mean? And they know what he wants. They don't have to have a conversation about it. We know that who Dana White wants to win every time he walks into the cage. We know who he wants to win when Sean O'Malley walks into the cage. So I don't know, man. It's just, that shit blows my mind. I could go on for days, but I'm just very disappointed.
And then just to add insult to injury, a lot of Patty's post-fight remarks just didn't help the situation.
He's
getting very cocky. He's very arrogant. He was telling Rogan that he clearly won that fight and like no ifs, ands, or buts.
Delusion.
And I don't know. I just think no one really believes that Patty won, and if they do, then maybe they don't fully understand MMA judging and the rule set. But it is what it is. Like you said, it's very disappointing. You don't want to think that the judges are in bed with the UFC, but I don't know. You never know.
You can't help but to believe it. And and that's the thing. Like, let's say that happened, or like the Sean O'Malley one happened, and I hate to compare them because they are very different. They really are.
Yeah.
But like one a year. But like, man, these are happening like back-to-back months or like 2 months away from each other. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
This is a little crazy. And going back to what I was saying, one of the things I think is disappointing for Dana White, because obviously Patty gets a number on the win column. I think he realized you put him against anyone in the top 25, really. Top 25, I think Patty loses. And I think he realized that. Because there's one thing that Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Sean O'Malley, Sage Northcutt, those were all his golden boys. Sage Northcutt was one that got cut. I always mention him because I'll never forget him coming in. He's like this ripped young kid. He's doing backflips, barely moving. Comes in, gets a win over some guy who was about to retire. Forgot his name. Then after that, straight losses, and he declined. He went to another promotion, got his ass whooped over there. And then it was the same thing. But one of the things that they always had in common where they were finishing people and they were dominant. Conor McGregor coming in, just TKOing everybody. The Sugar Show, to this day, that is a superstar. Sugar Show is a superstar. He breaks people apart. He's knocking people out. He has highlight reels. He's doing walk-off knockouts. Ronda Rousey was going in there. Nobody had an answer for her judo and armbar. Nobody, until Holly Holm came, was able to, keep distance and start knocking her out and ruined her career. But that's what they had in common. They were coming in and they were dominant.
Yep.
So then we had that expectation for Patty. He doesn't look like the fighter. He has a whole country behind him, which helps. Same thing with Conor. That also helps. But he's coming in here. That first fight where he looked terrible. He wasn't looking technical. He was wild. There's a lot of flaws in his game. Even now, they kept that last fight against Jared Gordon. A few people would have put him on his ass because Jared, he kept leaving his chin up and he was wide, and he just does a lot of things that in the top, when any ranked fighter is putting him to sleep. And I think that night Dana White realized that. Yeah,
and I think him taking out his frustrations on Jared was kind of, I think he wanted to take those same frustrations out on Patty, and who knows what they say behind closed doors, but it's like he's given him all the opportunities to be a superstar, and now it's just on him to deliver. And so far, I don't think he has, and I think the UFC and Dana White are starting to realize that. And the skill just it's not at that same level compared to the amount of hype that he has. So, we'll see where this Paddy train goes. I think, of course, they're going to milk it as much as they can.
How many bad fights can you give him?
Yeah.
Before and someone's like, all right, now what?
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah, and the UFC has that London card coming up in March. Maybe they tried throwing him onto that. Maybe not. Maybe he blames, I think it was his ankle that was giving him issues after the fight. Maybe he uses, the time off to rest and then hopefully really like sharpen his skills. Because like you were saying, his striking, a lot of the times he leaves his hands down. It's just,
he's wild.
I guess
Chin up after.
It's just his comfortable stance and his comfortable way to fight. But
yeah, he has bad habits.
Yeah, against any elite lightweight, that division is full of killers.
Oh my God.
There's no way that he'll cut through anyone in the top 10. I'm telling you,
it's literally top 25 I think will kill him.
Yeah.
Literally, like I think they'll embarrass him. And they got to figure it out because after another fight, I'm not going to say Jared Gordon's a nobody, but let's be honest, you're not putting up against elite contenders.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And so let me ask you this though. I believe he's ranked 15 right now in lightweight, but how do you think...
Paddy?
No, I'm sorry. No, not Paddy. Number 15 right now in lightweight, it's Tony Ferguson. How do you think Paddy the Baddy does against Tony at this stage in his career?
I think Tony Ferguson, after looking the way he has in his last few fights, you know what? I love that fight. I'm glad you just said that. That would be a hell of a freaking fight. And you know what? Tony Ferguson has not stopped taking losses. You're fighting a guy on a losing streak. He's about to retire. But who better than one of the best lightweights to ever walk into that octagon to fight you?
Yeah.
Right? And a real test. And it could go either way. It's kind of almost like a lose-lose scenario because it's like, oh, he was about to retire, or this or not, or not, you lose to him. But you know what? I think that's a real test. And I really like that. I think that matchup will be great. But to answer your question, Tony Ferguson at this stage in his career kills Paddy Pimblett. Kills him. I really do. I think he'd submit him. I really do.
I want to believe that as well. I think a lot of that fight, the outcome would depend more on Tony than on Paddy. I think it depends on the type of Tony that we see that fight week. Yeah. In his most recent fight at 170 against Nate Diaz, which was a last minute change.
He looked terrible.
He didn't look good. He looked very slow. He looked old.
He's also fighting at 170, which there's no need for that. He needs to fight at 155.
Yeah, and at this stage in his career, I don't know if it's still in the books for him, but that would be a fight I'd like to see.
I would like
if
that.
they want to give Paddy a step up in competition, then
I like that, and it just makes sense. And you got two big names that'll bring people around.
Yeah, and then also Tony can benefit off of Paddy's name and
they'd feed off each other, and not only that, but it's like you want the real guys. Try this one. Try this one who's walking out, who's about to walk out. If you could handle him, you know what? Step into our top 15. If not, thank you for playing Sage Northcutt 2.0. Take a hike.
Yeah.
And I really do think it has a lot to do with a country behind them that always helps. There was an American fighter, I think it was Jared Gordon actually, who says there's so many Americans here. It's not like we go pick somebody and we're all going crazy about someone. But when you have someone randomly, like Conor McGregor, he had a whole country behind him, and it makes a difference. Here we don't really see that because there's so many American fighters. But one state, just like Darren Till, you get someone who's showing actual superstar qualities and somewhat dominant, they pick up, and you know what? It's like ride or die.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good segue into our next fight to discuss would be Darren Till versus Dracus du Plessis. I believe that's how you say his name.
Well done.
That fight, I don't know, I think watching it made me just disappointed, I guess, in a way, because coming into MMA, really getting more interested in MMA was right around the time of Darren Till's rising in the UFC, seeing him climb the rankings. Super funny guy on Instagram, always with the memes and stuff.
Yeah.
The Smash Bros with Hamza.
Yeah.
I've always bought into it, but he's at this point in his career that it doesn't look like he wants to be there anymore. And he's been at the top. He's challenged for the title at welterweight, but ever since then, he's won one fight, a split decision against Kelvin Gastelum, and I think he's lost at 4 or 5. I would have to pull up his record to see exactly, but he got knocked out against Masvidal, won against Gastelum, lost against Whitaker, and what was a close fight, but maybe it wasn't Whitaker's best night. Lost against Brunson, and then now lost against Dracus du Plessis. So I don't know what's next for him. I think he's about to turn 30. So
he's in his prime, or age-wise. I'm saying he's definitely not in his prime.
Age-wise, he should be. MMA, career-wise, maybe he's already on
No, he's definitely on the decline. I mean, it's pretty apparent. And like you said, he just looks like he's not there.
Yeah.
He doesn't. Like, he looks like he doesn't want to be there, but in reality, he's just not there. I don't know. It's not the same there until we saw climb the ladder.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who like he doesn't care. Like he has that clip. I'll fucking fight anybody, anyone, anytime, whatever. And he even goes on to say in an interview like he'll go like a year without seeing his kids. He doesn't give a shit. He's like, I want to fight. I care about this, and he's about it.
Yeah.
You know, he dedicated his life to his career in the UFC, but it's just not showing. And I've been over it already. You know, I got off the Darren Till train. I'm still a fan, but I just don't expect much anymore after seeing his last few performances.
I think it's just the combination of all those years of, probably overtraining in the gym. He's been known for that, sparring too hard, not resting enough, not prioritizing the recovery aspect of a camp, not being there around his kids. I think it's all starting to really add up because as he gets older and as he's, talking about now in his interviews and stuff, what he really cares about is, his 4 daughters and his family. All he wants to do is just spend time with them.
Which is crazy, right? Talking all that nonsense before. And but
it just shows like the change in the progression.
Yeah.
But going
maturity,
forward,
really.
Going forward, I think he could possibly, have a revival in his career. I think, honestly, a lot of his success was being a weight bully in welterweight. He had the size that a lot of these 170ers didn't have. Yep. His kickboxing and his Muay Thai is phenomenal. Grappling in this past fight, his takedown defense was atrocious. It really makes you wonder like what him and Hamza are doing all the time in the gym, because it looked like he hadn't spent a day trying to practice defending a takedown. But I think he needs to really take a step back and analyze what he wants to do going forward, because if he's not fully committed to MMA, then there's no point in doing it, because it's a very dangerous sport. There's a lot of damage that you can take, and long-term wise, if he's already made a mark in the UFC, really, do you want to keep going if you're not fully committed to it and possibly tarnishing the legacy that you have left? But that's all for him to decide.
Yeah, now we'll see. And now that you mentioned that, and we're kind of talking about someone who really, I left his career up to this last fight. You win, all right, we got Darren Till back, let's keep it moving. But that loss, I really do think like it's kind of over for him, and even the quality of fighters he's going to start fighting, I think he's on his way out. Yeah,
and I think Anthony Smith touched on it too post-fight, saying that Till really needs to take a step down in competition just to get his confidence back. Yeah, which I agree with 100%.
Yeah, and at this point, just do it.
Yeah,
just do it.
He's not a main card fighter anymore, I don't think. I think he's...
And if he is, it's his name, and it's like early, like first fight to start the main card, something like that, which, I mean, he basically was. He was the second fight after Bryce Mitchell. But before we get into Bryce Mitchell, what do you tell me about Wonder Boy? Now that we're mentioning about these older gentlemen, kind of been in there for a while. Wow, what a performance. That's the same thing. The same situation Darren Till was in is how I felt about Wonder Boy. Like, him coming in, I was like... You lose this, maybe it's time to start, thinking about walking away or changing up the competition. Yeah. But I could not have been more wrong about him and what I expected from him.
Yeah, Wonder Boy looked phenomenal in his fight against Kevin Holland.
That was crazy.
However, I do think a lot of, the aspects of that fight were like perfectly set up for Wonder Boy. They basically had a gentleman's agreement. Him and unranked Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's not ranked in welterweight. Yeah. They basically had this gentleman's agreement that they were just going to strike the entire time. And at one point when they took it to the ground for the first time, like Holland even said, get your ass up. Yeah. And the crowd was buying into it. I was there live. It was amazing. But overall, Wonder Boy, he just looks like he's a gatekeeper in welterweight. He is. I think at this point with Leon being the champ, he probably has the best chances to dethrone him as far as like compared to any other the top 5 being champ. Yeah. Just because that division is so grappling heavy in the top 5. And Leon, we all know how he won that belt. He was getting dominated for 24 minutes, landed a phenomenal leg kick straight to Usman's head, and, he won the belt. But against Hamza, Bilal Muhammad,
Gilbert Burns.
He already lost against Bilal Muhammad and against Burns. Even Sean Brady, who I think is ranked 9 or 8 in welterweight. All of them. Shavkat, who he denied a fight against. Yeah. Everyone coming up.
They need him. Yeah. And he said it too. He's aware. He even said like, I'm going to, if you want to see a fight, put me against a striker. Right. But it doesn't work like that. It's mixed martial arts. So he's definitely fun. I would like to see good matchups. Like, maybe him and Masvidal.
I think that's a great fight, a rematch between them.
Yeah, exactly. Leon Edwards, people like that. I think those are really fun fights. But yeah, man, he impressed me. But yeah, he's never gonna be a champion. He's definitely a gatekeeper. And now's his best opportunity to sneak in there, just like Masvidal.
Yeah,
we've spoken of this. Funny enough, we love Jorge Masvidal, but I hate the hypocrisy in a sense because I had beef with Leon Edwards when he gave him that 3-piece with biscuits backstage years ago. Then he never fought him. Then obviously Leon becomes champion. All of a sudden Jorge is like, hey, we gotta finish business. Remember me? After he's obviously losing to. He lost to Kobe, he lost to Usman, and now he's like, oh, title fight, come on, we have beef. So, but I really do think also for Masvidal, it's the best case scenario. If Masvidal becomes champion, it's beating Leon Edwards. It's not beating Usman, it's not beating Covington, it's not going to be beating Khamzat, it's not beating Burns, anyone like that. So he has to fight him. Same for Wonderboy.
Yep. So. And what I like for Wonderboy right now, like this stage in his career, and I hope the UFC would do something like this, either with Wonderboy or with Masvidal. We'll talk about that later on. But going into that London card in 2023, of course they're going to try to have Usman versus Edwards 3 for the title in London. Usually for big fights like that, they always have a backup replacement. I think Wonderboy as a replacement would be great because, if something happens and they're not able to, both fighters aren't able to make it, at least you have Wonderboy as a fill-in. And,
either way, it'll be a show.
Yeah, he'll definitely show up and, he'll be there ready to fight. But, he had 2 chances at the title at 170, both against Tyron Woodley, and unfortunately they didn't go his way. But, this is the final stretch for him. So
yeah, no, this is his final run for sure. Definitely. Yeah. And, I mentioned his name earlier, and this is the last thing we'll touch upon before getting into a recap of this year and what's to come. What do you think about Bryce Mitchell?
Oh, man, I love Bryce. I disagree with his viewpoints on the earth being flat.
Which I think is a troll. I think he said that just to get on the Rogan's podcast. But then after he made a couple videos, I'm like, man, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think he fully believes the earth is as flat as this table. But, it is what it is.
Respect his beliefs, yeah.
I think he looked. He didn't look like himself in this last fight against Ilia Topuria.
He mentioned it. He said he had the flu a week before or something like that.
Yeah, he looked very slow. He looked gassed out.
He didn't look like himself at all.
Yeah. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he wasn't his entire self. Maybe the flu is because of that. Or maybe Ilia Topuria is just that good.
He is that good, though. I'll give it to him. He is that good. I don't want to take anything from Topuria. He's good. He's the real deal. But so is Bryce Mitchell in my eyes. I like Bryce Mitchell. The fans definitely like him. He definitely got that America thing going on. Yeah. So the fans
camo shorts, everything. Yeah. I buy into the hype. I think he can definitely make a big run at 45.
Yeah, he'll make a run. I don't know if I ever see him sitting with a belt, but he's definitely, like I said, a fan favorite. He's a patriot. He's cool. I love when he starts talking politics and stuff. It's really fun to hear.
Yeah, it's funny.
But yeah, man, it was disappointing to watch that fight. Yeah, it sucked to see him go out like that. He took a lot of damage.
Yeah,
he took a lot of damage.
Yeah, he ate some big blows from Topuria. Hopefully he recovers and his next fight goes his way. But I think Topuria now is the time to feed him someone in the top 5 and really give him a test. Yeah. How well he does against anyone in the top 5, who knows? But I think a fight against Holloway, Calvin Kattar, these are all big names that are possible.
Those are really good matchups right there. Yeah. That'll be fun to watch. And it's what's next. It's, especially now that you mentioned Max. Max coming off another loss to Volk. What do you do now? At this point, you're coming in to fight for some money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, if he stays at 45, if not, then, maybe 55 is in the books for him. But, we'll see.
Yeah, he's how many times are you going to fight for a belt? You know what I mean? And if Volk's sitting on the throne, stop making that fight out. That
third fight, it could not have been more clear that
Volk's a better fighter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that being said, we are going to start recapping 2022. And you said it earlier before we started recording. It's you said it in the recording too, that it's some people really love this year, some people are indifferent, some people hate it. I think it was a solid year. When we were looking at the pay-per-views before starting, I'm like, man, maybe it's not as good as I thought. Because as far as the full pay-per-views go, there's definitely some gold in those fights. But I think you made a good point by saying that it's such a hard year to follow, being 2021. That was probably the best year UFC's ever had. So to follow that was really tough, and I think that's maybe the issue. And it's not an issue because I still think it was a solid year, but that's how I feel about 2022.
Yeah, 2021, we were coming right off of the end of COVID. They started having fights with fans again in person. Mm-hmm. We had 2 McGregor fights, McGregor, Poirier 2 and 3. Yeah. There was just a bunch of bangers throughout the entire year. So to follow up, that entire lineup of fights in 2023, in 2022, it was going to be a tough challenge. And I think the UFC knew that. I think they did as best as they could. Yeah. It was definitely, in my opinion, a good year. It wasn't, as great as the last. But it also just speaks to the fact that as MMA fans, and specifically UFC fans, we are kind of spoiled in the fact that, we have such elite matchmaking. The fights and the cards, they just constantly deliver.
And now it's like so consistent. The UFC, we get UFC every weekend, man. Yeah. That wasn't a thing. Yeah. That's not how it worked. We would get it once a month. You would watch those cards, and now we're getting, like yesterday, it was like I kind of forgot there was a card, and then I get home and I'm like, oh my God, there's a fight night tonight. Like, boom, you turn it on and you're watching it for free. So I do think that fans are spoiled. I think we're getting so much UFC all the time, and it's awesome. It's great. It really is becoming one of the biggest sports in the world.
Yeah. And so I think, 2022 overall, I'll assess it as good. Closer to great. 2021, I'll say is great. Yeah. Good, closer to great, rather than good, like closer to bad. But
so with that being said, since we're reviewing 2022, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do top 3 pay-per-views. So top 3 pay-per-views of 2022. Daniel, hit me with your 3.
All right. So my number 3. This one is a bit debatable from what I've seen on the internet and stuff, and just how fans felt about it overall. Me personally, for some reason, I really enjoyed this whole card overall. Maybe with the outcome of the main event and how things went there, but I'm gonna have to say UFC 274, Oliveira versus Gaethje. I think going into it, we thought Gaethje was the guy to finally take the belt away from Oliveira. Oliveira was coming off of the win against Poirier where he submitted him, but we were saying Gaethje, he has that crazy power. No way Oliveira's chin can handle it. And he made it look easy.
Yeah.
Against Justin Gaethje, he probably made it look the easiest out of all his fights against in his title reign against Poirier, Chandler. That fight against Gaethje, it was like at one point it even looked like he knocked Gaethje out. It looked like Gaethje was out when he hit the floor, but it was a great card. That was the main event. The co-main event, which was an absolute, probably the worst championship fight of all time. Carlo versus Rose.
I was about to say it's hard. It's really hard to put that pay-per-view on, but I guess it's hard, to judge because when you have such a great fight in a card, and then it's like, oh, I love that card.
Yeah.
So
I think it's definitely a card that'll be remembered for that reason. Yeah, and then also adding in Ferguson and Chandler.
Yeah.
Chandler's front kick that put out Tony's lights and honestly had us a little bit worried.
Yeah.
That Tony was still, breathing. But overall, that's my number 3.
All right.
What about you?
My number 3 is actually UFC 275, which is Hughie Glover. And I believe we also have Wei Lee and Joanna in there. And I just, honestly, I'm putting it there based off, it's crazy that I'm saying pay-per-view, but I took a look at the pay-per-views. Nothing wows me from head to toe. Not a lot did, at least. And I just think, because for me, that's probably the best fight we got all year. I'm putting it as my number 3.
Yeah, and that had the co-main event of Valentina versus Santos, and a lot of people thought Santos won that fight.
Yeah, it was a close one, for sure.
Definitely a good card. Back to Singapore.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had ever been to Singapore. I think they had been, but
I believe
that was definitely a good way to go back to Asia just after COVID and everything.
Yeah.
But
number 2?
Moving into number 2, this one was tough because, like you were saying, looking at the whole list of cards for the year, I think if I had to pick a number 2, I'm gonna say UFC 278.
Okay.
So Usman versus Edwards 2.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think that main event was absolutely insane.
Just how it turned out.
Kamaru dominating for 24, 23 minutes.
I really don't even like that fight, honestly. You could put that fight in front of me and I'm like, okay, it's an okay fight, but just that there was so much on the line and how it ended, it was like...
I think the rally and that comeback from Leon was insane.
Literally Rocky.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. So that definitely, takes that whole card takes number 2 for me because also we got the Costa versus Rockhold fight, which
so much fun.
Was just weird. It was fun. It was weird.
And I believe Jose Aldo, that was his last fight as well.
Right.
That card, right?
Yep, against Merab. Which Merab, didn't like how he fought Aldo, but props to him for winning.
No. Retired.
Yeah, and that was also the UFC's first main event, or I'm sorry, pay-per-view event in Salt Lake City. So that was cool to see.
Random facts by Daniel Rodriguez.
Different states. I thought that was nice.
That's cool.
That the UFC is expanding. So
I'm actually going UFC 280 as my number 2.
Yeah, it's understandable.
And on paper, should have been the card of the year. Honestly,
yeah,
definitely didn't go the way I expected. But you had the Sugar Show on there. You had Aljamain Sterling fighting T.J. Dillashaw. Obviously, that didn't go the way we thought. And then Islam and Charles Oliveira. And then you also had when you have someone like Bilal Muhammad on the prelims, you know it's a good freaking. And a lot of people don't like him, boring. But I'm saying such a contender fighting in the prelims is impressive. So yeah, I'm gonna make that my number 2.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm being a little bit biased, but had it not been for Charles losing the belt, I probably would have put that card at number 3. But instead, I put 274 with Charles knocking out, submitting Gaethje. And
you have to give him the star power there. Like UFC 281, on paper, best pay-per-view by far. We didn't get the delivery, so it's not my favorite. Yeah. But it was a good card.
Yeah,
it was a good setup.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our number 1. I think we both agree on this one.
Unanimous, yeah. I think a lot of the fans would agree as well.
Yeah.
UFC 281. Going back to Madison Square Garden, their annual Madison Square Garden showing at this point, because every year, I think in November, that pay-per-view is always in MSG.
That was such a crazy card. Honestly, when I see Izzy when I see Izzy fighting on a card, I love Israel Adesanya. I have no issue with Israel Adesanya, but I do know that a lot of his fights can be boring. He put me to sleep against Jared Cannonier.
Right.
The Whitaker fight was solid. But man, what a fight with him and Alex Pereira. And I think it also helps that we were in Vegas. We were in Vegas together watching the fight. So that was also an experience. But the whole card, and then you have Dustin Poirier fighting Michael Chandler. That was so much fun. It's just, it was good. It's definitely goated, that pay-per-view.
Yeah, just also kind of similar to Usman and Edwards, not so much, just the turn of events. We knew that Adesanya for the most part was leading, but just the way that Pereira caught him in those final minutes was insane.
That's the third thing about it, guys. We've had 3 fights where it's like Rocky stories, right? So Glover Heary, honestly, I think Glover, don't cry, bro. It's not that serious. It's just so Glover Teixeira against Heary Prochazka. I think Glover takes that fight if it goes into decision. It was definitely a close fight, but guess what? Heary finishes it in the last round. Leon Edwards Usman, guess what? Usman was winning for 24 minutes basically. Leon gets a last minute win. And then Alex Pereira against Israel Adesanya, if it goes to decision, Israel wins the fight.
Yep.
Alex Pereira's corner tells him, hey, you got to finish him. Washington finishes him. So that's 3 title fights where they were going to go a different way. And within the last round, the underdog gets that finish. So that's fun. That's fun to say in 1 year for 3 title fights to end the way they did like that.
And it's cool. It's just fun to change up the division a little bit. You had Usman and Adesanya that they were running through all these top 5 contenders. And so now the division's shaken up a little bit.
That's another thing.
They get their rematches. And
look at this year. How many changes in as far as belts go? Who's still champ? Francis was champ last year. Other than that, I mean, and I'm going through the divisions in my head. Like Figueiredo took the belt. Islam took the belt. Sterling was already champ. I'm thinking.
Volk remained champ, yeah.
Volk remained champ. I think he's one of the only ones. Heary, new champ.
Yep.
And now, I mean, it's vacant. But
yeah.
Leon Edwards, new champ. And then now Alex Pereira, new champ. I mean, we have quite a few new champions, and that's pretty cool to see. And like you said, it keeps things interesting. Obviously, some of those people would have liked to keep the belt, but I thought it was time. And I think as far like the Israel Adesanya turn of events, I think it's gonna set this fire within him. I think he's coming back hungry, man.
Yeah, because now Izzy has 2 kickboxing losses against Pereira and then 1 MMA loss.
And I don't remember if we talked about it, but even when they announced that fight, I said it, guys. Israel Adesanya, I love the guy. He's so good. I'm never gonna count him out. But there's a difference when you're fighting someone who's defeated you, and not only that, but someone who's knocked you out. Mentally, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different, and you have to understand there's a huge mental aspect to that game. There's, that self-confidence in there. You're timid. You're not throwing the same type of blows, or you're scared to do so. And look what happened. Even though he looked phenomenal, he wins that fight if he doesn't get knocked out like that. But yeah. And then moving on, I guess it's only fair for us to do the top 3 fights of 2022.
Yeah, so this one's going to be a little bit tough.
And go straight through. Hit me with your 3, 2, 1, and then I'll hit you with mine.
All right, so number 3. I know it probably should be a little bit higher, but, just for, the point of this list, I'm going to say Yuri versus Glover.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that was, in a lot of people's eyes, that might be the fight of the year. But, I'll consider my biases, and you'll see why my number 1 is my number 1. But, yeah, I'm going to take that one at number 3.
All right, what about number 2 and 1? Keep it going.
Okay.
Run through them.
So, number 2, this one was a little bit of a crazy twist, I would say. But I would say Covington versus Masvidal. More so just because of my going into it, the emotions that I was feeling. As a fan of both guys, hyped for it.
Were you as emotional as you are right now that you're tearing up here on camera?
No, this is all from coughing. But I think the fight could have definitely been a lot better. But just the hype, I completely bought into it. I think, I'm a fan of both guys. We're being honest, we're both from Miami. Both guys are, based out of here in South Florida. Yeah. I think
they were friends and stuff, so it was cool to see that actual feud. That was serious, obviously, because Masvidal jumped him later on, but that was real.
So just the whole saga and the whole story of it. That's why my number 2 is my number 2.
Interesting.
And then number 1 definitely is a fight of the year contender. I'm gonna say Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler, and so I think that. Everyone watching that fight went through the roller coaster that it was. Mm-hmm. Chandler, first round, is always a beast. He's a different kind of killer. I think him versus Gaethje really showed that he can hang with the top guys at lightweight. Had he fought with a little bit more fight IQ, that probably would have been his fight to take. But I think against Poirier, it was a big test for him. But Poirier showed why he's still the man, and why you can never count him out.
Poirier is such a monster.
The mileage that he has, on his MMA career, the experience, it all showed in that fight. And so he ate some big blows from Chandler. He was getting rocked a little bit, I would say.
He did.
It looked like at some points the ref was about to step in and stop it. But overall, he was able to rally. He pushed through, and he got Michael Chandler in a submission in round 3. So I love to see it. As a fan of both guys, but
I'm a fan of both guys, and I think Michael Chandler right now is one of the most exciting guys in the UFC besides someone like Sugar Show. But it's that he is going out there for the fans and the crowd. He's not necessarily going out there for the win, and I think that's why he lost to Justin Gaethje. And that's why he lost to Dustin Poirier. I'm not saying that the other guys don't have the skill level to beat him. I'm just saying he was at a disadvantage because he wants to go out there. He wants to stand and bang. And you know what? When you do that, you make mistakes. There's risks involved. And I thought he actually fought a lot smarter this time around than when he did with Gaethje. I think he showed a lot of octagon immaturity with Justin Gaethje. But you know what? Dustin Poirier has proven time and time again that he's just a monster.
I agree.
So my top 3. So believe it or not, and I don't know if it was I don't know. I remember waking up and watching this fight, and I was like, "What the fuck? That was so much fun!" And I was alone watching it. It was I don't know, Tai Tuivasa against Cyril Gane, another very exciting guy to watch. I know a lot of people might not even have that in their top 5 of the year. I don't know why I loved it so much. I do know why I loved it so much. They were banging it out, which obviously that's always going to be a fan favorite. There was a turn of events on both parties, right? When you have heavyweights, it's so exciting because you really don't know who's gonna get it, because there's so much power. It takes one slip, it takes one bad mistake, it takes one punch to get through. It is over. Yeah. And Tai Tuivasa at one point dropped Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane just showed how technical he is, ate up his body, and then Tai Tuivasa is honestly a juggernaut. He does not stop coming at you, and for him to be put out like that was sad to see because I'm a Tai Tuivasa fan. But man, what a fight. And it was just electrifying and exciting the whole way through. So that's my number 3. Number 2, I'm gonna change mine because we spoke prior after you said something. I'm gonna put Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Kevin Holland. I think it deserves it.
I was gonna say that's a notable mention.
Yeah.
I was there, I saw it live. It was insane.
That fight was so much fun to watch, and it's because of that. It was so much fun. I'm not putting Chandler and Poirier on mine. For me, Gaethje Chandler was my top last year. This year, it's probably my number 4. But I'm not including him. I think Stephen Thompson and Holland deserve that one, and I didn't think of it prior to us speaking of it. number one, Huey Glover. I don't even think it's close. I really don't. I think what a fight in every aspect of it. It was exciting. Championship fight. The result of it, it was just crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Amazing fight. Hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't think we see a rematch between them anymore. Just with the turn of events that has happened at lightweight or light heavyweight.
If Glover wins the belt against Jamal Hill, yes, we do.
I don't know, because this injury is so serious that apparently he's going to be out for a minimum of a year. So, who knows if, Glover wins the belt, his next defense would be against maybe Ankalaev or,
You're right. Yeah, no, we might not see it. But it was more of a respect thing. Since it was so close, he was like, hey, you get a rematch against me. I'll sign that. And, I mean, it is what it is. I would love to see a rematch. But I think I know who the better guy is there. I think Jiri Prochazka is very good. And I think if he fights Glover again, he finishes him striking.
I think so, too. But we also forget that Glover was winning that entire fight. And then the last 30 seconds he tapped.
I know. But, and how ironic, right? That, that he tapped. Like, nobody would have... What were the odds of Jiri winning by submission, and not only that, but in the 5th round? Whoever bet on that, who picked that, you could have put $1 in and become freaking God knows.
Yeah, the odds must have been insane.
Yeah, those odds are crazy. Yeah. And then I guess we move on to what's coming for 2023. We got some good stuff coming.
So I'm not gonna say I hope 2023 is a lot better than 2022, because like I said, 2022 was good. I think the UFC is going to get on the road a lot more this upcoming year. I think fight nights at the Apex are going to be a thing of the past. When they do these fight nights in Orlando, Columbus, it's fun. It's a good way for them to go to, cities that they haven't been to in a while, especially coming off of COVID. And so you can throw, a lot of like top contender fights in each division, put them on a main event. And I think a lot of people will turn out for them, and they're going to continue this segue of selling out every arena that they go to. But now we're seeing they're also going to other countries. And first card of the year in 2023, UFC 283 in Brazil. I don't know how many years it's been since they've been to Brazil, but I know they were in Brazil in 2020, right before COVID, that they had to take out all the fans and everything with Kevin Lee versus Oliveira. Before that, I don't know how long it's been since they've had fans there. We all know Brazilian fans are, they definitely show up to UFC fights. The energy is insane.
Yep. It's going to be huge.
And now it just got a last-minute main event. Coming off of 282, we have Glover versus Jamal Hill for the vacant light heavyweight championship.
That's going to be great.
We have the first ever fourth fight, rivalry in the UFC with Moreno and Figueiredo.
I really don't know who's better.
Yeah,
I love the fact that they're getting a fourth. I really do. I like Moreno a lot. Yeah. I like him a lot more than Figueiredo, but they're very close. They step in 6 times. I think each one gets 3.
Yeah, and honestly, there's an argument that they've saved the flyweight division because before that, Henry Cejudo had won the belt. He brought some life back into it, but before that, it was just Demetrius Johnson completely running over everybody. Yeah. So that definitely brought some life into that division. It'll be interesting now once they're finally done to see some other contenders, get a stab at the belt rather than these rematches. But you have to do it. They're 1-1-1, so you gotta get that fourth fight in. Glover versus Hill. I really like Hill's chances in this. I think Glover's experience is really what's gonna get him a W if he ends up coming out on top. Yeah. He's going to show that he's the seasoned vet. He knows, what it's like to be in that title fight, and he's going to, give Jamal Hill a long night in the office, because I don't think maybe Glover gets a sub early on, but I don't think it's going to be an early round finish if Glover comes out on top.
And is it time to walk away if he loses?
He said that he's not going to. I don't know if I believe him, but
I don't know, because I guess you could still get him back the year after. If Huey comes back, you give him that rematch or just another contender. Yeah, but he's performing well, man. He looks good.
He's in a good camp. Pereira's in his corner. Yeah, he definitely he's on a good groove right now. Despite coming off of the loss, so that should be a good way to start the year.
You're right.
Pay-per-view wise. Moving to February, we have UFC 284, Volkanovski versus Islam.
Oh man, I'm so excited.
Champ fight.
That's a good one. And honestly, I think right now Volkanovski is my favorite fighter. Just all around. Sure. I think I could give him that. I love how humble he is. I like his little cooking show sometimes. Like, he's just a great guy. And I just think he really is just so technical, so good in everything he does, so fast. The size is gonna matter. The size is definitely gonna matter, but and Islam's a different beast. My problem is if he gets into a predicament where like Brian Ortega, I think he loses. I think Islam finishes him if he gets into that hole, which is very possible. But honestly, I think if Volk and him stand and bang a little while, which Volk's not known for knockout power or anything like that, but he's definitely gonna shake him up.
Yeah. So I go back and forth on my excitement levels for this fight, honestly. I think this trend that McGregor pretty much started, being champ and stuff, it was great. I think Volkanovski has definitely earned his chance at being champ. Yeah. I just think against Islam Makhachev, his chances don't look that great. I think weight matters, size matters. As phenomenal as Volkanovski is as a mixed martial artist, number one pound for pound, I just don't think he's going to have an answer for Makhachev's grappling, and I think Makhachev is probably going to suffocate him. And everyone says that Volk is very good at escaping positions on the ground and whatnot, but
they're different. Different. This is not like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and obviously, look, for Islam to submit Charles Oliveira, like, think about that.
Yeah,
that's a black belt of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This guy's coming in with his Dagestani wrestling, and he's doing what?
Absolutely.
So they're different breeds. They really are, and how they fight and how they're sneaky. It's different. So I agree. If I had to put, obviously I will put money on it. You got to go Islam. Like, my prediction is Islam, but I want Volkanovski to win. 100% of me does. Yeah. I have that doubt, but I'm sticking with Volk.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. UFC is going to Perth for that. That'll be cool.
That's another thing. That home court advantage, it's gonna be nice for him.
Yeah, but overall, UFC fan, I'm gonna tune in regardless. But
obviously,
excitement levels aren't quite there as much as they are for this next card after that.
And now that you mentioned that, before you take off, I agree. I've always hated the champ thing that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
McGregor did it, and at that time it was more of a money making thing.
But the opportunity was there.
Yeah, the opportunity was there. Like, hey, this guy, obviously he's a superstar. Let's give him this. And then, we have, after Triple C did it, Daniel Cormier. We have a few double Nunez. So, I just think when you do that, you have to have some sort of agreement. Like, you're champ, but now you got to come back and fight. And that's what McGregor did. Became champ, left the division, never came back. And he held that belt for a little bit. And it's like, no, you're not the double champ. You need to come back, you need to defend the belt, and vice versa. So I think if you're double champ, you get double the work. You got to fight at 155, well, you got to continue. Like Izzy, fighting 3 times in 1 year. That's what you should be doing if you're double champ.
Yeah.
2 in 1 division, 1 in this, because it's ridiculous. You hold up a division. Yeah. And it's dumb. But
to Volk's credit, they do have the interim featherweight title fight on that card. Josh Emmett versus Yair Rodriguez. Yeah. So that'll be, the winner of that is going to fight Volk, win or lose against Islam.
Exactly.
But, God forbid, Volk gets injured or he has to be sidelined for, an extended period of time.
But that's another thing too, the interim belt. Like, what does that even mean? You're not really the champion. I love how
you're just the number one contender.
You're the number one contender, which you already know. You get to hold the belt. You're not really a champion. Dustin Poirier was interim. He's never felt like a champion because you're not.
Right.
So I think it's just stupid, and I really do think it holds up a division. But, everyone loves it.
Yeah.
So, like you said, moving on.
So, my excitement levels can be more higher for this upcoming card after that one in March. UFC coming back to America for UFC 285. John Jones versus who? We don't know.
I know. And it's just so much talk around it at this point. And it's like, yeah, they're making it official. Oh, they're signing. And it's like, I have a problem with Francis Ngannou. Am I going to tell him to his face? Of course not. But, he's holding up the division.
He is.
You know what I mean? And it's annoying. I understand. He feels like he's not being compensated properly, this, that. He had the injury. But we need something. Do something.
Yeah.
And I think it's, John Jones against him is so much fun. We get to see John Jones at heavyweight. It's a scary matchup for John Jones. You haven't been fighting. You're getting heavier. Now you've never fought at heavyweight. It's scary. And you're dealing with someone who has one-punch knockout power, where John Jones doesn't. John Jones wins his fights in decision or submitting people. He does not usually do it knocking anyone out.
He could do a TKO, but
here and there. But I'm just saying he's never been known for like knockout power.
Right.
It's not his thing. Definitely the highest fight IQ there's ever been is John Jones.
Yeah.
He's gonna pick you apart, and I don't doubt he could do it to Francis Ngannou. The difference is he's still the same John Jones we know him.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 years since he last stepped foot in the octagon.
That's a lot. Ring rust is a thing.
Yeah, and then his last performance, many people thought Dominic Reyes won. So there's a lot of questions for John to answer. Ultimately, I believe he's the greatest of all time. I think he'll definitely have an answer or a good game plan drawn up for Francis. But if it's not Francis, it's probably going to be someone like Curtis Blades is the talk around the town. I think against Curtis Blades, his chances are even better.
Way better.
Curtis Blades hits hard. He put out Chris Dawkins earlier this year.
Yeah.
But I think John's wrestling and just overall his fight IQ is going to be, what helps him win that fight.
Apart.
Yeah.
I was listening to DC break down their fight, and like the things he was saying, just breaking down everything John was doing to him, and then like a strategic kick at this time, and it was just. It's honestly, when he steps into the octagon, it's perfection. And just so we clarify, because we both think John Jones is the greatest of all time, that does not mean we think he's the best husband, father, or anything else of all time, because that's always a discussion. Yeah, but he beats his wife. We're not judging that. Can't
comment on that.
And I always say, when we're talking sports, I don't need to like you as a person, but if you're the best, you're the best. It is what it is. So I had to clarify that, because that always comes up in comments and shit. It's like, oh, he beats his wife. We're not talking about that.
Yeah,
so I understand.
Completely unrelated to his MMA.
So he's the best mixed martial artist of all time. What he does at home or in Vegas or in the back of a cop car is not our issue.
That's him and the state's business. But
the law.
I think hopefully they get that fight done, him versus Ngannou. Ngannou's contract expires now at the end of the year. Dana was commenting that he's very optimistic that they're going to re-sign him. But, at the end of the day, Dana also said, this is where you're going to be fighting the best of the best. So if you want to leave for more money and go fight in Bellator or
the one, whatever you want.
Whatever you want to do, just know that you're not fighting the best of the best.
But just do it already then. Because he keeps doing this back and forth, and he expects Dana White to come behind him like, oh, please. It's like, no, Dana White doesn't need you. And it's the truth. I'm sorry, Francis Ngannou, it's cool to have that champion. They don't need him. Francis does not need him at all. He needs a UFC, if anything. So if you want to make more money, go, man. I wish you the best. He's a great fighter, but he is holding up a division, and at this point, he seems like a diva. Right. You know what I mean?
100%.
And it's like, you don't expect that from someone who came from nothing, because he literally, there's pictures of him as an adult there, like freaking...
Yeah, his story is insane. But also, with the change of events now at the light heavyweight division, seeing Yuri vacate the belt because he knew that he was going to be out for an extended period of time, it's like Francis, you knew that he was going to be out for at least 9 months.
He didn't care.
With the knee.
Yeah. It just goes to show you, and I'm done picking at Francis, because whatever, it is what it is, or the decisions he's making because of what's going on in his life, not my problem. But it just goes to show you Yuri and the respect level he has, and like for the game, and you know how he is. He has that samurai warrior, so it's pretty cool to see him with that respect. He's like, I don't want to hold up this division, And actually, there's been some speculation that he's not really injured.
I saw this,
that he's
serving a USADA suspension.
Exactly, and they're blaming it because they don't have to come out with it or something.
Yeah, apparently now USADA doesn't have to disclose when a fighter's suspended.
Which is crazy.
I'm not entirely sure on the legalities of that or the rules.
I read something like that. I obviously don't know if it's true. I'm sure the guy messed up his shoulder, but it's funny if you imagine he's actually serving a USADA suspension. It's like, guys, this is the worst. Now they have like people coming out. This is the worst injury we've ever seen. He's out for 3 years.
Yeah.
Like, all right, bro. Yeah. Just like now, I'm sorry, McGregor too, bro. McGregor, I was cracking up when Joe Rogan said if he pees, he'll pee through a USADA cup. It will burn through the cup, and it's true, bro.
Yeah.
Anybody, I made a video also saying that McGregor's on steroids, and I was just posting pictures, and everyone was like, oh yeah, or how about everybody's a McGregor fanboy. Everyone was like, oh yeah, he has, superior genetics, and it's hard work and dedication. I'm like, you guys are all morons, man. Like, people are just like, they're just so blind.
Yeah.
It's like, it's fine if he does steroids. I'm not digging on him, but guys, he's doing steroids.
Yeah.
And he's obviously out of the USADA testing pool. Like, it all just adds up, and just go through his Instagram. He looks fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and
his delts, his vascularity, everything, and he's always had a good physique.
But like the two can't coexist. Like, he can have amazing genetics and be a superior athlete and still take steroids.
Exactly. He's like, everyone's like, he's working hard. It's like, yes, I know he is, but also he's putting a needle in his ass every day. You know what I mean?
And he even came out and he made a tweet saying that USADA needs to reevaluate the protocols for dealing with such serious injuries, because the current protocol of basically not using any performance enhancing drugs, it's not good for an athlete's career.
Yeah.
And so I don't even think he's flat out denied that he's not on steroids.
No, exactly. And you know what? I don't disagree with him. I don't think it's wrong because at the end of the day, I think it was Bisping who said it. You can't. I'm not gonna judge a fighter. At the end of the day, when they leave. Oh no, it was Luke Thomas actually. I don't judge them for doing steroids. These guys have to deal with these injuries for the rest of their life, just for our entertainment and them fighting. And it's like if he's taking something that does help his process and recovery and his bone structure, I'm not gonna stop him. Right. Obviously, there's more to it. That guy's not doing just handling or doing drugs for his injury, but. Yeah, you can't hate on them for that. So I just found it funny when Rogan told him that he'd burn through a USADA cup.
Yeah, so would Rogan, but I think
but he's not a fighter. You know that nobody cares. Yeah.
But so I think that'll be a good return to the U.S. for the UFC. Big pay-per-view. John Jones, definitely want to see him back. And then as far as of December 18th, this is the latest pay-per-view into 2023 that has been speculated. But it's UFC 286, and it's the UFC going back to London, back to the O2 Arena. We have Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman.
Question mark. Well, it seems that it came out the other day. His hand injury, he's going to need another surgery.
Right.
So I think he's officially out. I want to say so. I don't know if you've heard anything, but that's what it's looking like. And now the question is, what happens? And we touched upon it earlier, speaking about Masvidal and like Wonder Boy. But I don't agree with it. It sucks to say. I don't want to take anything away from Leon Edwards, but I'm going to. In my eyes, Usman should be champ. And not that it's not like a decision. He shouldn't be. He got knocked out. But I feel like he's the better fighter. That's what I mean to say, right? I think he's better than Leon Edwards. I know that sounds like I'm hating, but it's the truth. I think he's more dominant. But now this opens up for I really do feel like an opportunity for Masvidal, Wonder Boy, where if they fought Usman, it's just it's not happening. Yeah. And Masvidal's already had his 2 shots against Usman. He's not getting another one. Wonder Boy would absolutely get mauled by Usman. So now the question is, who gets this title shot? And there's so many matchups to make in that division, but I don't think Masvidal deserves it right now, coming off of 2 losses to real deal contenders.
3 losses actually. The first 2 Usman fights and then the Covington fight.
Exactly, you're right. So 3 straight losses, and before that you fought Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. You know what I mean?
And then Askren and then Till, which all Askren nice wins, but
but it's not enough to throw you at another title shot for basically nothing, just because you're gonna bring in buys.
The whole build up with him versus Leon is what happened backstage at that. That fight.
And that's honestly, I really do think it's gonna happen because that's what's gonna make them the most money.
And Leon, if he wants it, then credit to him. It is what it is. It's probably a good tune-up fight for him to take. While waiting for Usman. Yeah. And
and it's fun. It's gonna be fun. That's a great matchup. That'll be so entertaining to watch Jorge Masvidal against Leon Edwards. There's no doubt about that. But when we're talking, as fans, is this deserving? Because we talk so much about contenders and the rankings, and there's favoritism obviously because it's about money. But it's Masvidal doesn't deserve this title shot. If he gets it.
He doesn't, but at the end of the day, the UFC is a business, and
I understand that, but we're going a different route. And then you have someone I don't know, I really like Gilbert Burns. I don't think they're gonna give him that fight. I mean,
Burns is gonna fight now in January against Neil Magny.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying the contenders who. Then you have someone like Khamzat Chimaev just sneaking in there. He'll get a title shot soon. Yeah, he took out Gilbert Burns. That's a huge win, and that's when we really saw him get tested. But I personally, I think I would love to see Kobe in there. Also not deserving of it though. He's taking those losses. I would love Kobe in that spot, but really Kobe Khamzat. Winner of that one next to be number 1 contender. That's ideal for me.
Yeah, that's the fight to make, I think.
Yeah, but who do you put to fight Leon Edwards then?
I honestly, hear me out. I would put Masvidal just because I think Leon wants that fight. Clearly, Jorge wants that fight. Obviously. He's not deserving of it, but it makes sense. And I would rather see that than Khamzat get a title fight after his last debacle at UFC 279, coming in at weighing 7 pounds over. I think to reward him with a title fight after that essentially is nuts. And then also, it kind of leaves the business between Edwards and Usman unsettled because then, Khamzat clearly is going to be the favorite in that fight. Chances are he's probably going to win. Yeah. And so now Usman, to get the belt back, has to go through this monster who knows if he would have even won, had they fought while Usman was champ. Yeah. I think the safe fight to make is Leon versus Masvidal.
It makes the most sense. It really does.
Yeah.
Ranking wise and contender wise, it's like, oh, he doesn't deserve it. But it for everything else to play out, it's what you need. And honestly, I think the Leon versus Usman trilogy, and to be going to the O2 Arena, like that, it's gold.
Yeah,
it's gold. It's like perfect. So for him to get injured is just they're throwing everything at Dana White right now.
Yeah, and hopefully, maybe Usman actually can go through a hand surgery and be good enough to go through a whole fighting camp and make it to the trilogy fight. But
who knows?
If they had to pick a replacement, I would want to say either Masvidal or even Stephen Thompson, who Stephen Thompson's ranked number 6, I believe. So he's ranked higher than Masvidal. I think Masvidal was like 9 or 10.
Really?
Yeah, so he's way back in the rankings. But he's also a name, and so if Leon would rather fight
that
him,
makes the most money. If it's not the trilogy, that fight makes the most money. But I don't know. And even Kobe, I would love to see Kobe in there with Leon Edwards. Yeah. I think that's a really fun fight as well. It's a big name as well. But yeah, I don't give Khamzat a title shot already. And I think a good test for Khamzat is another elite wrestler in Colby Covington. So I like that fight, like we mentioned. So
yeah, we'll see. It's definitely going to be an exciting first quarter of 2023 for the UFC. I think we have a lot to look forward to. Hopefully the UFC delivers.
Yeah. So we covered UFC, all of 2022, favorite pay-per-views, favorite fights. We talked a little bit about 2023 and what's to come. And of course, guys, this is our second now podcast episode. Now we got Mike's a little better of a setup here. We're going to be doing this as often as we can. Hopefully after each pay-per-view, we could get one in. So guys, do me a favor, like and subscribe. Chances are you are watching this, well, actually on YouTube, because this is at the end. But I do want to say, be sure to follow us on TikTok. And of course, now subscribe to YouTube. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.